Kia ora. My name's Tom Anderson, and I'm studying the community story um, module this term. And I'm interviewing my friend and colleague Leith Wairoa, who is an RTLB for the Wairoa district and a long-time resident of Wairoa as well. So thank you very much, Leith.
That's all right.
Cool. So Leith, I guess I've got a little bit of an interest. Why our cluster goes from the top of the East Cape all the way down to south of Wairoa, and I do a lot of work in Gisborne. But for my community story, I wanted to know a little bit more about what happens outside of my Gisborne part. So um, my interest was in Wairoa initially around like some of the inequity in funding, which I'd heard about, which happens, I believe, in Wairoa. But since I asked Leith about what happens in Wairoa and whether I should do my community story around Wairoa, I found out that there's some wonderful things that happen in education in Wairoa, but there's also some barriers, and we're going to talk about those now for the next 20 minutes, half an hour. Thanks again, Leith.
Yes.
So, Leith, could you just tell me a little bit about maybe what are some of the really enablers or the good stuff that happens in Wairoa? What makes Wairoa such a special place? Because I know from talking to you, you love living here and you love the people. So could you tell us a little bit about what's so special about this cool little town and the district?
Kia ora, Tom. And so what is special to me about Wairoa is that this is my home. This is where I whakapapa to. This is where a lot of really, really good things happen. Everybody knows one another here. Everybody supports one another. There's good relationships. So in terms of enablers in regards to education?
In regards to education.
Yeah. Okay. So an enabler is, I think, in my role as RTLB here is the networks and the communications, and the fact that when you've been here a long time, you know many people and you know how to support people because you know people. You know people, you know your places, you know the good places to be, the places and the knowledgeable people to tap in, and the collaboration that goes on here. So as an RTLB in Wairoa for the last, since 2009, but since we transformed 10 years in Cluster 21, the collegial collaboration to be positive change agents to make effective change in our education system is the huge enabler.
Yeah.
And that's been the most exciting thing for me professionally and personally in the last couple of years, is leading up to this year, whereby we're at a place now as iwi and in partnership with Te Maho Ministry of Education to do some really dynamic positive stuff to make learning better for our akonga, whānau, kaiako, kura that we work in. Yeah.
So your network is built around people that you've known, you've got solid relationships with them for a long period of time.
Yes.
You know their strengths.
Yes,
you know,
and their weaknesses.
Yeah.
And also in our liaison role and interface with managers of other ministries, and that we're well respected because we're not just following the status quo all the time, Tom. We're actually pushing to be changes, to make effective changes that need to occur for our kids and our students that are getting disengaged in education, for different reasons.
And that's one of the things in the readings and stuff and the discussions I've had around looking at this topic is sometimes the rule book that's made in Wellington doesn't work for here.
Doesn't.
And you've got to come up with innovative and be flexible in how you approach whānau, how you approach the education system, and make it work for yourselves. And sometimes I guess that means that you've got to push back at times as well.
Yeah, and you've also got to, as a professional, but also as whānau, you've got to support your whānau to know what to do to create positive change too. When the student might not be getting the deal that they need, or they're not happy to go to school, they don't want to get out of bed. And so we're weaving, I suppose, it's like weaving, where we're supporting in all aspects of our work to make life and learning better for those, and that's not, that's right through. So so that's our vision now, is actually not just looking at the year ones to year 10s that we do as RTLB, but looking wider, like how can we ako our whānau to be happier and learning more, or getting engaged, like, helping that 25-year-old go and get his license, and offering to be his reader writer because he was with RTLB right from when he was probably 6 years old.
Yeah. Now that relates to a discussion Leith and I had about an hour ago, where she was talking about a RTLB case that she's still involved with, who's now 25 years old, but there's still that community where you just don't walk away from people. You don't just close a case, do you?
Well, that's whānau. So, that person probably got closed. I could go back in the old file, which it's probably been shredded now. But the thing is that that's how we roll here. We do have our Wairoa way.
Yeah.
We are a part of a cluster from Gisborne, but for 10 years now we've often said, oh, well, we're the poor cousins over here.
Yeah.
And that's true. That's how we've felt at times, because we do get pressured to act and behave in a certain way because the engine room says to do that. And yes, we're effective, professional people, but we will do whatever we can do here with our schools and our principals to create effective change in regards to schools being real happy learning environments. And then if the schools aren't, well, what else can we create? Because that's what my two colleagues and I did. We saw for years that this just wasn't working, and it wasn't working for other professionals that we worked with. This is as RTLB, I mean. We're not getting the change needed. We've got apathy of teachers to do anything different than what they've done for 20 years.
Yeah.
And we've still got those kids unhappy and then dropping out of school or getting kicked out of school. So we looked around at, well, what could we do to support our whānau, hapu, iwi and kura to make it better? So that was the fire that was lit for then the Te Haerenga report, which you're going to use as evidence, in your...
Absolutely. Te Haerenga report really is the foundation of this whole story.
Yeah.
So Leith, you were actually involved in the Te Haerenga report from the perspective of that they gathered your opinions, and your network was very much involved in the beginning of it, wasn't it?
Yeah. So what happened is end of 2020, my two colleagues and I went to our management and asked if we could do a project on alternative education in Wairoa, because we had none. Our one that we previously had was ineffective and it was closed, and there was just nothing. And because we'd been hearing this disheartened kōrero from many different people, we thought, well, let's do this research. So we did. We went and spoke to the Director of Education and spoke with him about our intention, and then we went around locally and neighbourly, like Gisborne, Hawke's Bay, and to Taranaki and Auckland, and did a lot of research. And we at the beginning we went to our Wairoa Principals Association and said our intention, or shared our intention with them too. And then the iwi or Tai Whenua with the Wairoa Principals Association collectively engaged with IHI Research, and Kathleen Savage and her team did that IHI Research project, which was the publication of Te Haerenga. We are Appendix A or Appendix 1, because they didn't realise that we'd lit this fire in the beginning, and we'd done all this research already ourselves. So they were like, oh, wow, geez, we wish we'd come and seen you at the beginning, because you've already done the solutions. So their research was about the backstory of historical education in Wairoa up to now in regards to disengagement, but we'd gone boom, solutions, because my two colleagues grew up here, went through schooling here.
Yeah.
I came here about 25 years ago because I whakapapa here, and so we already knew the history. We went to solutions, and they're like, yes, we'll put that in there. So we're Appendix 1. And now we're at the stage of implementing change, or supporting schools to implement the change that is needed. So it's very exciting.
So the Te Haerenga report was brought about because, unfortunately, despite all the wonderful opportunities and the wonderful cultural richness there is in this district, there's some things in education that aren't working for a lot of kids in town, isn't it? And without naming any schools, but some of our schools are leading the statistics at the wrong end, at stand down and suspension levels, and something's going wrong. So that was a key driver for the community wanting to find out some answers, wasn't it, as to what's going on?
Yes, it was, and yes, it was, and yes.
Well, I said it all for you.
Yeah, I'm like, what should I say next about that?
Cool.
Ask me another question.
Okay.
Oh, so that's so all schools, and one especially, is just in a particular position now whereby there is, and I can say this, I think, Tom.
Yep.
We can cut it out.
I can't cut it out. I'm not that technologically advanced.
Well, anyway, they're just at a point now where they have got an intervention that has been perhaps forced upon them because it's not okay.
Yeah.
And that's in regards to equity in education.
Absolutely, yeah.
And yeah, we'll just leave it like that, I think. So,
cool. So I guess like
do you want a piece of cake?
No, thanks. This guy will probably eat that whole lot anyway. This is Boy, by the way. Oh no, I just lost my train of thought.
Yeah, so you were talking about that school where there was disengagement, and
there was,
and the thing is, so it became apparent that there was a huge inequity there, and also big issues with cultural competencies. Actually, I'm going to say, and so because
which is unusual for a community that's so rich in cultural.
He's going to love you.
We're taking him home. Yeah. For a community that's so rich in lived culture, isn't it?
Well, that's the system, Tom. That's the system where you get leaders that think that Māori kids should learn in a particular way in the four walls of a classroom. And sorry, they're going to butt their heads like anything, and not want to be there. So that's in that school we offered support from the RTLB service, and we did a lot of support. When we did our research, we met with that management team and did pilot projects with them too to show them a different way, but it wasn't taken up and fully run with because they don't have the capacity or the knowledge to take it on, or they don't choose to, and now they've got a statutory intervention sitting on them this year. So it's just, times this is what happens. Kids and families will walk with their feet. We've got many students disengaging themselves because they're not happy of the place where they go. We've only got one high school. The wealthy families can send their children away to boarding school, and they do, and that's historical, but there's no other choice here. And
so that's an inequity, isn't it?
Oh,
right
yes,
there,
very much. If you've got the money, you send your kids away.
Absolutely.
But then we've also got, like, I have an old friend who I played bridge with, and he was a doctor. He doesn't live in the town now, but he's a doctor, and he had one daughter, there's one child, and she went right through Wairoa College and is a GP now herself. So it's not to say that students don't achieve at our local school. They do.
Yeah.
But there's inequity in provision. There's inequity in money to do things differently and use our beautiful environment that we have.
Yes. Yeah.
There's people that are quite happy in the system repeating the same, like, what did you say, 1 year of planning and repeat it for 20 years?
1 year's experience.
Or 1 year's experience and repeat the same old for 20 years.
Yeah.
So, as well as the fact that, there's a relieving shortage in New Zealand, but here, to get PD and all that, you've either got to travel an hour and a quarter to Gisborne, or an hour and a half to Wairoa when the road's open, so there's an equity of opportunities.
Yeah.
But then also when subjects, we've got beautiful environment, lakes, rivers, and then we've got teachers that feel pressured to teach reading, writing, and arithmetic from 9 to 3 instead of, in my opinion, when like you and I went to school and we did more of the arts and music and education outside the classroom, and teachers have even locked themselves in classrooms instead of getting out and using the beauty of the environment that is surrounding.
Yeah, because we all agree that,
that
academic learning is important, but it doesn't work for every child, does it? Hey. And within the community here, that there's some opportunities that we could be doing to develop some of the kids in this community, but we're sort of stuck sometimes in that they must be doing 4 or 5 hours of academic learning in a classroom every day, and it simply doesn't work for
But that's where, as RTLB, we can actually say to those principals, well, why aren't your teachers getting out in the environment? Because we used to do it in the city, but sometimes I think, Tom, perhaps it's apathy, or is it that they can't afford it?
Yeah.
Or they're not making it affordable, or they're not prioritising it or something, you know, like there's many solutions to a problem, but I think sometimes it's like, I've often thought, well, far out, you know, you can do anything that you choose to do within that, you know, the hours that you have.
Yeah.
So you can create that dynamic change, because we saw it when Dee and Dalen and I travelled around the country. We saw the most beautiful things happening. You know, like the Green School, for example, in Taranaki. But I mean, you know, they've got lots of money, but you don't have to have lots of money to do beautiful
when you've got an environment
educational
like this
experiences.
Right on your doorstep,
Absolutely,
You've got the beaches, the lakes, we've
the
got
bush,
beautiful
rivers,
places
mountains.
like
Yes, yes.
Hey, like Waikato Moana, you've got an amazing resource sitting right on your doorstep. Hey.
Yeah, so it's quite frustrating.
Yeah. Another the Taharinga report mentioned something about you know, like if we're looking at inequity, I know in Gisborne that if the school system isn't working for students, there are alternative education options for them.
Yes.
Whereas here you are much more limited. If the mainstream system isn't working for a child here, where to? There's they've got some of the highest rates of homeschooling, but how successful that is, and some whānau may not be successful because they don't have access to the internet.
Yeah. So they're being almost forcefully disengaged by the education system because the system isn't changing to meet the needs of the students.
Yeah.
We do have motivation, which is led by Bronson Tyther, and he's doing some dynamic mahi with young boys who are affiliated to the mongrel mob or not affiliated, and that's basically mongrel mob looking after mongrel mob and doing good learning experiences for those boys. And then we've got another newish opportunity happening at Te Rauhina Marae, which is Oranga Rangatahi, and that is funded by Oranga Tamarika, I think, and a local person, Edward Karodia, and another lady. They run that in collaboration with others, and we work alongside them too with kids that we know are just not going to be happy at school anymore. So I liaise with them, and we're in the process of we collaborate with others that are doing other things, but we're also looking to the bigger picture of, okay, so what can we do to support our schools to apply those principles, like those sort of, I don't even like the word alternative education anymore, but you know what I mean, those other learning spaces within the school. Like, you know, and ask the questions, what is it, why you can't change up what you're already doing? You know, what are your barriers, you know, principles to making learning opportunities better for the kids that are in it? And because you can't do the blame game thing on the whānau anymore. Just asking the questions to create the thinking and the drive in the other people like we have. You know what I'm saying?
So you know the people and those options that you were talking about a couple of minutes ago, are they ministry kind of run, or are they just people in the community?
No, they're people in the community that have decided
it's not working for us. We're going to do our own thing anyway.
Yeah, that's what you said last.
We don't have time for the cogs of the Ministry of Education that turn glacially to wait for these kids. They need something and some options right here, right
that's
now.
Right. And so they get funded by like MSD, Oranga Rangatahi. I think it's a multi ministry funded thing. It's like, and they're happening in other places too, like Huntley and Portakey and them.
Yep.
But you know, by the time a kid gets to that though, Tom, their mana has decreased going through the system. So why can't it be better from 5? And so that's as RTLB, that's what we're looking at. We're doing a lot of systems, a lot of projects in schools rather than individual cases, because it's like, boom, let's go here now. We're here.
Yes.
That's sort of next level.
Yeah. If we can make a difference for one,
exciting.
Why don't we try and make a difference for the whole cohort?
Oh, yeah, that's right. Right, whole school.
Yeah.
And supporting the principals to mana up those teachers that might be a little bit needing a bit of a whatever.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. Boot in the backside.
Well, yeah, bit of a dust up, or kia
Maybe
tere
it's time to move
tō,
on.
harawai, yeah.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Now, another challenge for parts of the community is poverty, isn't it, too, Leith? So how, I mean, we talked a moment ago before about how some parts of the community can afford to go beyond the, beyond the boundaries and take their kids to Napier or other parts of the country for their learning. But, I mean, that's not affordable for everybody. It's not even an option for everybody. And why should it be somewhere where you have to go out of Wairoa to get, more opportunities, eh?
Well, yeah, and sometimes that's there are families that work jolly hard to get their kids away to boarding school too, because they're fantastic sports people, or they've got a particular strength, so they want them to have a bigger experience elsewhere. Yeah, so the questions around poverty,
well, I think we touched on a little bit of it before, how there's, when you don't have the money, you don't have the option that some of the other parts of the population have. Isn't it? Is that true for schools as well as individuals?
I think it depends on which lens you look through, Tom. Like as you say that, I think of perhaps my late husband, for example, whereby he was from a big family. They didn't have a lot of money, but they were brought up to behave and to go to school to learn. And you listened to the teacher because they knew everything. Yeah. But they also learned how to look after the land. He had to get up and milk the cows before he ran to school, and then he would have probably ran home or walked home and then had more jobs. So they learned to work hard. Yeah. And this is what I learned from Mary Berryman in regards to poverty and whatnot, is that she grew up in a similar rural Māori community whereby they were poor, but they learned to work hard and to be well behaved and to be resilient and fed, and you grew your own kai and all of that. But it depended on what your role was going to be in your life. So if you were going to be the farmer and take over the land, you'd get taught those skills from your whānau, and you'd learn to read and write and do arithmetic, and it didn't matter too much about going to university, of course, because you're going to take over the farm. Yeah, sure. Or if you were smart, that's how it would be sort of said, or you wanted to go off and be something, you could too. Or if you were a woman, you were trained to be a good wife. So that's all learning. So it just depends on the lens that you look through. So because sometimes poverty is seen to be a negative thing, and yes, it affects, because our kids will stay home if there's not a lot of kai in the cupboard that week. And when there's a lot of trauma going on, or there's a lot of sort of shit hitting the fan type thing, may I say it like that, is that your kids will stay home, or some will just, you're off to school no matter what, whether we've got nothing, whatever. So it depends. It's sort of a bit like a pendulum, but poverty makes it harder, of course, for kids to learn because they're in a state of trauma. Yeah. And we know that, Tom, that if you're in a state of trauma, it's blooming hard to learn. Yeah, well, if you're not being fed and you're not getting the basics, yeah. Or even if you're getting fed and all of that, if there's violence and drugs addiction, like the P that's really prevalent here.
Yeah.
I think that we've got the highest P data in our water of anywhere in the country.
Okay.
So all these new things are impacting on our kids.
Yeah.
But it's not to say it's the blame game on our family. Look, we've got to learn as teachers to do something different so those kids will still be happy and learning when they're at school.
Well, school sometimes is the only stable place
that's
they've
right.
got, isn't
Yeah,
it?
yeah,
So
yeah.
that makes it even
Yeah.
more important
Yeah.
that we're
Yeah.
doing the right
Yeah.
thing. That sort of segues into, like, I know Wairoa gets a bad rap in the media, doesn't it, as far as gangs and stuff like that. But we were talking earlier on, and you were mentioning the gangs actually, they do a lot of good in the community that doesn't get reported.
Oh, absolutely.
And, you know, obviously there's some challenges with having gangs in the community as well. But what are some of the stuff that the gangs is bringing to the community, and how do they sort of, how could we work long term with the gangs to enable?
Yeah, well, I've said for years and years and years, ever since I became an RTLB, when there's drama going on at the local high school, I'd say to that whichever principal, why don't you go and have a meeting with the leader of both gangs, because you can't stop gangs from being at the school, because hey, they're here and they're here to stay, so work with them.
Yeah.
They are not bad people that everybody makes out that they are. They're also our whānau. And so, and that's what I was saying before about, you know, like motivation, for example. We work to support anybody to do whatever they need to do to get along.
Yeah.
You know, and we don't see the gang. Well, my two previous colleagues, and we don't see the gangs as a problem. Other people from outside of Wairoa might see that. We know how it goes. And the thing is, like, for example, Tom, in Cyclone Gabriel, it was the mongrel mob that supported immensely the distribution of resources and kai and aroha and helping clean up in this town and other towns around North Island. That wasn't reported in the media because they're a criminal gang. You hear more about the looting and all this and wāti. So that's just you know, institutional racism of another kind. Yeah, and the leaders of the mongrel mob are running the marae to get everybody housed and fed and clothed and supported. So that's another different lens, rather than seeing that, oh well, you know, Tom's from a mongrel mob family, he's got no hope.
So I mean, if you can utilise it and if you can work alongside the mongrel mob for that, then working alongside the mongrel mob and the gangs to help educate their tamariki is such a viable option, isn't it?
Yeah, because you talk to any person, everybody has mana.
Yeah.
Every human being has mana, and it's like you for example, and it's in the To Hiding a Report. You know, we had a dad, Black Power, son was playing up a lot, unhappy, this and that, and that dad wanted to go and sit by his boy just to awhi him in class, and was told by management he couldn't be on the school grounds because he had tattoos and he probably had a criminal record. Well, lots of people got criminal records in this town.
Yeah.
You know, there's, you know, whoop-de-doo, you know, and so that upset us immensely, because that poor father, he was so hurt and we know this because we knew that person, he was hurt at 35 years of age or whatever, to be told to leave the school grounds when he's actually in there trying to help his boy. So everybody wants, and gang members want their kids to have a happy life just like anybody else.
They're just parents,
well,
aren't they?
And I mean, the way I said, I just sort of go, well, it's a bit like, it's just a group. It's like, well, if you brought up Catholic, you brought up Catholic.
Yeah.
If you brought up Anglican, you brought up Anglican, you know.
Yeah.
It's just different, and this is what, you know, I've learned, is that all people are different, but we have to be respectful. Do you have to take that dog home, Tom? You know, we have to be respectful of each other's differences and not have fear to challenge what is sometimes required of us. You know, like think outside the square and be courageous to do things differently.
Absolutely. Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. So what would you say, we're probably getting towards the end of our
Yeah,
Leith, I think.
yeah.
What would you say for me as an RTLB? Where would I start to sort of somehow support the mahi and the mana enhancing stuff that you're doing for kids down here?
Well, I think I said to you time ago, Tom, I'd just come and hang out with us, and I can introduce you to a few different people that you haven't met before, and you can have a conversation with them, and ask if you can just sit and have a yarn, and because that's often the best way is to, like, it's, we often say that there's that old fashioned saying, it's not what you know, it's who you know, and sometimes it's just sitting down with someone and having a chat, and hearing their perspective, like chatting to a kid who whose parents might be happy for you to talk to, talking to a whānau, talking to a Black Power member, a Mungal Mob member, a principal of a predominantly Māori school, and a principal from a predominantly non-Māori school, because we have that, we have the white flight thing going on here. People won't, necessarily like to hear that, but it does. And just, have a few yarns, and just, come and have a Jack Nohi sort of, have a walk and a talk, and then you feel it and see it, and what it looks like and sounds.
I think you
like
mentioned a few weeks ago about maybe even taking on a case down here.
Oh, yeah.
Instantly when you said that, I thought, what a good idea.
Yeah.
Why aren't we all in the Gisborne office every year or so, every couple of years you've got to take on a case in Wairoa or a case on up the East Cape, just to be immersed in a different community, a different culture. And I thought that's a really, really good idea. So,
we're quite fussy about who we have over here too. Like, we would love the support, especially me this year being the last one standing. But we're also, because of that mana whenua, mana moana, mana tangata, and I mentioned earlier about us being the poor cousins. I know that we're not, and we sort of are sometimes, but we're very particular about who comes and works in our area too, because if you don't whakamana the mahi that we've done, if you come in here with your, if you've got an ego, or you think that you're better than everybody else and all that, we'd probably be saying, hey, you can toodaloo back to Gisborne, because we don't particularly like the way in which you operate.
You're causing more damage than good. And isn't that so true? You do have
so we're very particular
you
about...
You do have to have the right...
to make sure RTLB a mana enhancing of our
Here I am saying, bring everybody down, bring everybody down.
But your Aroha's great.
No.
What I'm saying, we will love and appreciate the Manaki, but we'll probably be hand-picking who we'll have. But you're welcome, Tom.
Awesome. Oh, hey, thank you very much, Leith. I don't want to take up any more of your time. I've really enjoyed having a chat this afternoon, and all the other advice and guidance, and pointing me in the direction of the Taharinga report that you've done over the last couple of months or so. So I think we'll wrap up our conversation now. But thank you. And
no, you're welcome.
Thanks for all the amazing mahi that you keep doing. Sometimes beyond the scope of what we're supposed to do, but that's actually
how we roll here.
That's how you roll in a community like this, isn't it? So thank you very much, Leith. And thank you, boy, for contributing lots of little boy bites.
Oh, cool. Okay,
cool. Thank you so much, Leith. That's it. Stop.